Father Simon and the Ever-Forgiving Collective. My confession takes us back to September 2015, when I just qualified as a secondary school physics teacher at the largest Catholic high school in the Northwest. At age just 22, but looking 15, I was grateful to the school for appointing me to be a Year 7 form tutor, as this would surely be a much easier path for me than an older group of children. As a newly qualified teacher, I was assigned a mentor, and for the sake of this confession, we shall call my mentor Nicole. In my first week, I informed my pupils that they and their parents were invited to attend a mass of welcome at the end of the week. When Friday evening arrived, we made our way over to St. Joseph's Church at about 6:30. In fact, to refer to St. Joseph's as a church does it no justice. St. Joseph's, in my non-Catholic opinion, was nothing short of a cathedral. Capable of seating more than 800 people, this was by far the biggest church I had ever stepped foot in. Nicole and I were greeted by the assistant head teacher, whom we shall call Mrs. Burns. Mrs. Burns was very enthusiastic about this evening and gave Nicole and me a very long explanation of the sequence of events that would take place in this Mass. Unfortunately, as this was my first Mass, a lot of this went completely over my head. I wasn't too concerned though, as at the end of the day, all I really had to do was to sit there and join in with everyone else and join in with the hymns. It was only once I'd sat down with my form group that I vaguely remembered Mrs. Burns mentioning that at some point in the service all teachers would be asked to send 2 children up to the front of the Mass to collect some gifts to be given out to the parents. However, as I was only half listening, I had no idea when this was supposed to happen. Would it be obvious? Would there be a signal? I had no idea. I was on the end of a row, so I turned round to see how far away my mentor Nicole was, and it turned out she was just a few rows back and also at the end of the row. Just as I was about to sneak up the aisle to ask her, the vicar began to speak, and the Mass began. Now, at this point, I wasn't too concerned. All I needed to do was keep an eye on what Nicole was doing, and when she sent her 2 children up, and I would just tap the girl next to me and send her along. Easy. It was when we were stood up singing our 5th hymn, that I spied another opportunity to turn round, and this time, clearly, we were on. Nicole had stepped out of her seat, beckoned for some children to follow her, and then the 3 of them started making their way to the back of the church. Well, I hadn't a moment to lose. I tapped the poor 12-year-old girl stood next to me and signalled for her and the boy next to her to follow me quickly. Being the eager, pleasing Year 7s that my form group were, I set off up the aisle. The 2 children followed me out of the pews without question. By now, Nicole and her child were almost at the back of the church, so I really put a spurt on, not even checking behind me to see if my 2 kids could keep up. My fast-paced walk turned into a shuffling jog. As I caught up with Nicole, I touched the back of her arm to make her aware that I was right behind her, hoping she could give me some kind of guidance on what to tell the children. Nicole turned round, and I will never ever forget the look of sheer horror that was etched on her face. "What on earth are you doing?" she snapped at me in a horrified whisper. "Are we sending the children to collect the gifts?" I asked, genuinely unsure why she was looking at me in such a hysterical manner. "No!" she snapped at me. My face demonstrated my confusion. I didn't understand why she had come to the back of the church if that wasn't the case. "I was just taking these children to the toilet," she says. Well, I'm not going to lie to you, Father Simon, I felt a bit of a fool. However, I didn't realise the gravity of the situation that had developed until she pointed and snapped, "Look behind you." I turned round and my heart sank. It wasn't just the 2 children behind me, but my entire form group had stood up and followed suit, and they were stood in a neat, single-file line at the back of the church. Sheer panic and confusion hit me. What was I going to do now? All of the parents were sat down as the hymn had long finished, so clearly there was no sneaking my 2 rows of children back without them noticing. There was nothing for it, Father Simon. I had to march my entire form back down to the front of the church, back into the pews. I kept my head down the entire time and my hands together, apparently in prayerful reflection, not daring to look at how this turn of events was being received. I completely blanked the child, who asked me on the way back to the pew, "Sir, what's going on?" because I had absolutely no idea. The final part of this disaster was that despite 26 children having quite easily fitted into the pews moments earlier, they no longer seemed to fit. "Sir, I can't fit in!" shout a number of poor children. "How can you not fit? You all got in before." Oh no, I whispered. "How can you not fit? Well, you got in all before." I was in an incredibly agitated state at this point. Shuffle up, I repeated. Pass it on. Shuffle up, say the entire class to each other. Drawing even more attention to this farcical turn of events, the priest tried to smile, but I could tell his facial expression meant idiot teacher alert. For the next few weeks, every time I moved anywhere around the school, various teachers would say very helpful things like, make sure there aren't any children following you. Sir, I think there's one still following you. You better move quickly. Anyway, I'd like to seek forgiveness from the children who were unfairly embarrassed on that evening, Mrs. Burns, who organised such a lovely event, and, of course, finally Nicole, my mentor, who had to suffer this as well as hundreds and hundreds of other ridiculous mistakes that I made throughout my first year of teaching. Yours, the anonymous physics teacher. Getting into all kinds of maths-related confusion and trouble. Sister Bobby.
Anonymous physics teacher. I don't think you need forgiveness from the children. I bet they loved that. I bet that's the best thing that happened to them for a good 5 years. I mean, what fun. That's,
Well, that was the highlight of their education,
well,
was it?
I just think it's those things when teachers go wrong that kids love it. And also you can kind of develop or encourage really good kind of relationships with your pupils that way, I think, when you've done something wrong, because they just love you for it and they'll forgive you for it. And unfortunately, of course, the service was disrupted and you wish it wasn't, but I'm sure most people will forgive you because actually it really, it wasn't your fault. Well, it was a little bit your fault. Listen to the question next time, or listen to people. That's the advice you can give your pupils. But the only thing I'm interested in is when did they have to go up and get the gifts? Because I'm still unsure. It wasn't clear, was it?
Everyone was so confused at this point, they probably gave up on the gifts.
Anonymous physics teacher, listen next time, but you're forgiven.
Brother Matthew.
Yes, definitely forgiven. And also what anonymous physics teacher did right in my book is brazen it out. Just, this is exactly what I
did it on purpose.
We take them all the way back to the back, and now we're going to bring them all the way back to the front, and none of them are going to fit in because apparently that's how physics works.
It's like a physics experiment. Yes. How come they all fitted to start with?
Basically because they cram them in at the start, and then somebody decides I want to be able to spread my legs this time, so, that kind of thing.
Maybe they'd all got a little wider.
Yes, maybe, on the way. And also, I love that this confession contains the words that no new teacher ever wants to hear, which is, sir, what's going on? I don't know. My first day too. So, yeah, definitely.